What's up, Moto Buddies? This is Mike here from Tacomoto. This is a 24 FE501 Husqvarna dirt bike, dual sport. This machine's been set up for a build customer. It's a full custom build set up for a guy who has been excited to get his hands on a bike that's a really do-everything machine. This is, we specialize in cross-platform bikes. Having a plate is really a big advantage for any machine, especially when you're doing multiple land use rides. And so having a plate really just gets you the opportunity to go in all kinds of different ride scenarios. And when you have essentially a race bike with the license plate, that's the killer setup. That's the ultimate way to go. And so this one has a couple of unique things that make it a little bit special. We'll cover some of those and talk about that. Starting up front at the front tire, he's got a Dunlop 606. This is a mated set, both front and rear. This is a very hard tire, DOT approved. This is super long lasting, and not a lot of feedback and responsiveness in this tire, but that's not always what a rider's going for. Sometimes he just wants really high mileage, high durability, and good flat protection, really strong stiff sidewalls on this tire, which make it a good high miler. Not a finesse tire, so this is not a good single track tire. Not really great for those types of situations where it's really rocky, ruddy roots. So for that, it's not ideal. But if you're riding BDRs, dual sport, you're covering a lot of miles and you're doing some highway, this could really good setup. And then notice here, he's got tubeless in here. So one of the advantages of tubeless, if you're a fan of air, and there are plenty of riders that are, this lets you widely manipulate the internal air pressure of the chamber assembly. So there's two. If you're not familiar with tubeless, we have a video coming up that does a really that'll do a deep dive on all the infill assemblies and options like tubes, tubeless, moose, all those various options. So the red chamber here, this is where you have a high pressure bladder, and so that high pressure bladder seals the spokes because these are not tubeless type rims. If you've ever had a true tubeless rim, there are no spoke holes. So every one of these holes is a source of air leak. And so you have to have some mechanical method to seal off the tube or seal off the spoke assembly, these spoke holes, from the inner air chamber. And so you do that with this. That right here, this part of the tubeless system, seals off the spokes, and then here is where you put on your regular air. And you can air that down to 0 and all the way up to 30, whatever you want. So it gives you a really broad flexibility with varying your air pressure, and then since you have no tube, you don't have to worry about pinch flats. So there's some really strong advantages to a tubeless system. Another advantage is the weight. It weighs very, very little. It weighs a fraction of the weight of a standard tube, especially like an ultra heavy duty tube. And then the cost is relatively low. So it's $100 a wheel assembly, and these can last multiple tire changes. Some of the disadvantages, it's very fussy. It's a complicated system to put up unless you're used to it. There's a learning curve to it. You have to drill a new hole in your rim for it. There's tape that needs to be applied in a very careful manner. So it can be fussy. Also, it can be damaged quite easily with installing and removing, and there's plenty of riders out there who ruin these in either install or removal, and then they don't hold air. And there are certain tires that are a little more finicky with holding air, and you have air maintenance. And then you still need to carry flat repair tools with you out on the trail. So the one thing, though, I would say that's an advantage is if you have a hole or a puncture that's less than 1/8 of an inch, that's really easy to solve. You can have some puncture flat like stands or slime in there, and that will heal most of the small holes. And if you have a big one, you can use some of those goo, like ATV and truck tire goo ropes, and those do a really good job of sealing up any cuts or tears that are about 1/8 of an inch or less. So strong advantages, strong disadvantages, not for everybody. This rider has made this choice, and so I think he's familiar with this system and had wanted it. So this is a unique combination, a very hard, durable tire with a tubeless system. And so for some riders, it's a really good problem solver. Notice that the weights here, we counterweight, we balance all of our wheels, and you'll see how many, it's kind of dramatic, how much weight it takes to counterbalance all the weight of this assembly. And so that just gives you an idea of what it takes to balance out that wheel. So let's move on. We've got the Cherubies, these are the mud gators. We love these and put these pretty much on all our builds, and you'll see those because you're going to keep mud and debris off of your lower stanchions and almost eliminate fork seal blowouts. The suspension's been totally redone internally, and that's all Tacomoto in-house suspension set up there. This is the new for 24. The new suspension is much improved over previous generation's bike, but it's still, for certain riders, has room to be improved, and we take care of all that. And STR on the air bleeders, we really like these. These are a double lock, so they lock air both on the out and the in, so they don't burp. Some have a tendency to burp air on the in when vacuum is created, and so these leak. They're leak free. They don't leak in either direction. Reflex on the handguards. We like reflex because there is a stainless steel braided cable right in here. We left kind of intentionally this little gap here so you could see there's these little bushings that cover it, but that cable allows really good bar flex. So if you have a set of bars that have good inherent, and the Pro Tapers do, if they have good inherent flex, then that is not stiffened by the bar guard assembly. These are super light. They have a nice clamp unit here that's very strong and reliable that goes here with the Mako 360. So let's spend a minute and talk about his upper cockpit assembly, his area, because there's kind of a lot going on. So we talked about the bar guard system. We like that a lot, very light, very strong. And then the Mako 360. So this is a rubber damper isolation system, and that prevents any metal to metal contact between the bars, the rider, and the bike. And so this dampens in all 360 directions, all the way around. There's essentially like a skateboard wheel here that the bar passes through and is clamped to, and that allows free and full movement of the bars. And so like if you have a bar, if you have a bike with a Mako 360 system on it and you hit the bars, you can feel, the video doesn't really do justice to what's happening, but you can feel that there is a nice damping effect to the impact point with against the bar here at the end. And if you took a standard bar, especially the neck and bars on a KTM, which are very stiff, and you did that same test, you would feel that this was like a piece of stiff rebar, no give, no flex, no damping. And so this is a really high-end, for us, essential piece of upgrade and add-on for any bike. We put these on all of our personal bikes, all of our shop bikes, and they do a fabulous job. So we've integrated that with a mount that then adapts the Scott's stabilizer. So this is really our preferred setup. Everything you're seeing here is really our A++ kit. And let's see what else. So on top of here we have, this is the Garmin XC or X. What is this unit? This is the XT2. And so this is the latest iteration of the Garmin series. That's sitting on top of the Mako 360. Let's see. Ram balls. So this is the new generation of Ram ball. They now have their own in-house. Well, hang on, I've misspoken. This is the double take mirror, no longer using the Ram ball unit. This uses their own in-house ball and then arm assembly. And then of course they've always had their own mirrors. And this is a really nice upgrade over the previous generation Ram ball, which now has a bigger and better ball on the bottom. There's some knurling in here for a good grab as well as here. And so this just is really a nice upgrade. We like that. Up here, you'll see that we have the Tacomoto fork, the flex signals. These have a really nice, cool effect where they have a very white, bright run light feature, and then they cascade out in turn mode. Ruby R7 headlight, absolute go-to moto-minded mount and surround. And on this 424, the all-new electronics and lighting package mean that any of the aftermarket turn signal headlight control switches do not turn off the stock or the aftermarket headlights. It requires some special electronics that we have adapted into our own kit. And so to get true off, you need our 24 specific lighting kit, and that gives you off function and then high and low. And then our kit also has solved the high beam light problem. So if you know any of the KTM products, when you put an aftermarket LED headlight on, you have that high beam light alert on whether you're in low and high. And so we've essentially solved and resolved all of the lighting once and for all for the 24 generation bikes. If you read out there in the comments, there's just tons of people who are frustrated and sort of exacerbated by the new lighting setup. And so Our system just sorts everything and solves everything. It's a plug and play solution for all of that. Notice here that we've got this USB charger. This is a little bit, I'm a little underwhelmed by what we have to do here to get a USB charger on here. I like this unit. This is an Optimate charger, and I think it's a good one, but you run out of real estate really fast when you have a lot of these things going on in your bar system. So we did not have available at the time of the delivery of this bike to put in the new and almost released, we're waiting to get our hands on one. Moto Minded is making a little dash solution that's gonna kick out the mask a little bit and then offer some gapping in here, which will allow us to mount the key and then a USB charger and some of that. So this is a bit of a temporary solution until we can get our hands on that. However, this could be viable for a lot of riders, and you could do this. This is a great solution. We 3D printed a little bracket here to allow it to not hit. We wanted a straight, see how this profile parallels here, the cord to the bar, and so we needed to stand that off a little bit. So we 3D printed a little bracket, we have some double stick tape in there, and then these zip ties. So while it's not all that elegant, and I don't particularly think it's, you know, the ultimate way to go, it is one solution. I will say something about a USB charger. It's pretty important to mount these in an orientation. I personally don't like them on my bikes when they're vertical. And here's why. I ride a lot of river crossings and do a lot of dumb stuff on my motorcycle. And so I am constantly having water splash and get up in everywhere on my bikes. And so when these are mounted vertically and you have a cord running from so you have your phone plug, you know, vertical plugged into that cord is going to attract water. Everything is going to be splash. You could get splashed water in there. And so we have seen these. I've been on a ride with a buddy of mine who had water go into not this one, but a different one. And it caught on fire. It shorted out internally, and there were flames and fire behind his headlight mask, which he saw, and we had to dump his bike and throw sand on it, and we put it out, and there was little to no damage. However, that is a real thing. And so I would just caution, if you're maybe like me, where you dial it up to 11 and you're a hard charger and you do all the dumb stuff on your bike, and there is a known tendency for you to get water in your electronics and water everywhere, then I personally don't run these on my bike of any sort for that very reason. I just bring a little, in my pocket, I bring a little battery booster. You know, you can buy those things, just like a little battery pack, and I charge my phone or electronics that way and not off the bike. So I'm not steering you in either direction. I think these are great, and I think there are people who should put these on their bikes. And if you do, we like them to be in a orientation. Ideally, you'd put it down. You would put this facing down, and any charger where you knew you were going to get water, face it down. So that's my little rant on that. I think that rounds out the Cockpit. We put on our Tacomoto. This is the upgrade to the start kill switch. If you know the new generation switches, very difficult to depress, no tactile feedback. And this is a massive upgrade because they have a very positive feel to the button. You can, there's just a nice feedback sense of what's happening with that button, and incredibly reliable. We have a lifetime guarantee on these, but we have yet to, in many sold, we have yet to have a warranty failure comeback on any of that. So really like that switch. And we like these too, and we warranty these for life. And we've had a few of these break. We've even warranted guys who seem to have some obvious mechanical damage that was probably rider caused. But one of the things you'll note about Tacomoto is how well we take care of our customers. And so we've done some warranty claims on these that were pretty obviously rider abuse, but we took care of it because that's how we roll. So this whole situation is a very trick setup. And maybe the last thing before I step away is the fact that we route the clutch hose underneath all of this. So if you've ever been really frustrated and annoyed by the fact that your clutch hose, when it runs up in the normal configuration, it loops over the top. And if you've ever mounted anything to your bars and had it ripped off, I've had GPSs on my bars snagged and ripped off by my sort of, I didn't quite pre-check the clearance, and I headed out on a ride, and the first really good compression rebound, and then when the cable went up and down, it snagged the GPS and ripped it right off. So what we do to eliminate that, and we pretty much do this on all our builds, it's pretty much a standard thing, is you'll see here, we route that hose underneath the bar assembly. And even if you didn't have bar guards that had this little arm over, we would still do this, but this kind of adds a little bit of catch to it. It just keeps it down a little bit lower. So that hose runs along here, and then we make these adapters here, and that grabs the clutch hose. Because if you've seen that hose at the top, there's a little metal, it's a little metal bung that's swaged on there, and we capture that within this bracket right here. And so that then is attached to the bars, and then we have another one down here. And so the hose now, instead of flexing and moving around up top, it now moves here in this section. And this is what Yamaha's done. A lot of the Japanese bikes have done exactly this for forever and ever. I have multiple bikes, older Hondas that do this, and Yamahas as well. So now what happens is when that fork is moving up and down, this cable is just flexing out in this direction. And that is such a massive problem solver to that problem like I described, and it just absolutely cleans up the bars, and you eliminate any issues with conflicts. So that's something that we do as a custom item for our bike builds. And then the other thing, I guess maybe before leaving here, is I've talked about this before, and I think we have a video that covers this product, but we have an electrical, let me pop the airbox here. We have an electrical sort of management system here that's this unit. And so we have one connection point to the battery. This is a power distribution bus that's relay controlled. And so on engine on, we're sending fused power, dual circuit fused power up here behind the headlight where we have some power taps. And so this GPS is powered with the engine on. It's powered only with engine on. And then there's power taps in here. And we have taps here that are circuited for engine on and then constant battery. And so you could put a battery tender here, you put an SAE plug, tuck it up in here. You could put some heated grips. You can just do all kinds of electrical tie-ins with this system up here behind the headlight mask. And that's another thing that we do on all of our builds. That's an exclusive Tacomoto item. Looking down here, we've got our Golon inline fuel filter, and that is nice protection for your fuel injector. Dirt Tricks, the sprocket and the dome washer. Tacomoto oil filter, molecule skid plate. This is a P3 Racing guard. Oh, TM Design Works here on the lower skids, lower guard, lower fork lug protectors, and then STR. This is an absolute winner of a setup. Minimal weight, fantastic protection. You'd be hard pressed to find a lighter and stronger configuration than this. Let's see, a Cherubies, that's the larger gas tank. I think that's the 3.6. I always forget what these gas tank sizes are. I'll put it in the links below. The guards here, this is a really nice, this is made by Dingo, and that is a hard plastic fork protector for damage. And then the fork shrinks up here. This is just purely cosmetic for the top. Let's see, Seat Concepts, this is the, I think this is the XL, yeah. So this is the wide, and that is really nice. I personally am a big fan of these. I switch back and forth between the XL and the standard, depending on the type of riding I'm doing. More aggressive rides, I'll put on the slimmer version, and then the maybe more dual sport or BDR, I'll throw on this. Also, these are the Motomine, not Motomine, this is the Pro Moto Billet. Pro Moto Billet. This is the extended air foot peg. Love these because this is a absolute safety item. And again, I will switch my Pro Moto Billet foot pegs if I'm doing hard enduro and aggressive riding. I will use their standard peg, which looks like that, and then BDR type rides, I will throw these on. So between the seat and the foot pegs, depending on the ride, I am swapping these back and forth. The Cherubies makes a nice swing arm guard. These are light and they do a sufficient job to protect yourself from any blows and impacts that would otherwise puncture a hole in the pretty fragile swing arm. If you are doing extreme hard enduro rides, crosslink components makes a much more aggressive, heavier and heavier duty version of this that might be worth looking into. Back here on the rear sprocket, that's a Dirt Tricks chromatic finish, and we use stock gearing, so I think it's 1449. And then Warp 9 on these wheel bolts. These are titanium and they're just super sexy. You'll notice on the exhaust, we went with stock can, but the promotability end cap, and I've talked at length about how that is probably my all-time favorite muffler configuration for these big bore Husky KTM Austrian bikes, and the reasons why. Back here, again, with the, this is the same Dunlop tire, the 606, and then with the tubeless as well. You can see back here how many weights it took to balance that thing out. STR in the rear, disc guard, absolute weight savings. Very likely one of the lightest, if not the lightest, and most, very high durability on that rear disc protection. We throw some safety wire onto the brake pins here so you don't lose those if those bang around. You see that we've put on some heat shielding here. This has a unbelievably dramatic effect to keep heat out of the shock, which is a really critical item if you're riding a lot of slow speed. So if you're a fast rider, a track rider, or a higher speed rider, there's airflow that's moving through here that's doing a fairly good job taking that exhaust heat and then moving it to the back. But the slower you ride, the more likely that all that radiant heat is just going right into your shock, going right into the oil. And so this bit of insulation here does a fabulous job. And after a couple of rides, some test riding, it's amazing how you can put your hand, you can put your hand and hold it there for a few moments in this area, and then you just get further back here, even in the muffler area, and you can you can't even put your hand, the amount of heat that is loaded into just the surface plastics back here can hardly at all touch that because of the heat. But over here you can put it on there for 10 seconds or so. It's dramatic and impressive how good of a job that does. Recluse, this is the 4.0 on this bike. That's a really, really awesome upgrade. Tacomoto oil cap, Samco on all of the hoses, and then we use the stock coolant back in there. We don't do anything fancy or magical with the coolant. There's a lot of hype out there about coolant, and we just use the standard Motor X and or the Volkswagen G12 Plus product, which is the same exact rating and essentially the same thing, that pink European coolant, interchangeable. This is a heat shield for the radiator hose as it transits over the top of the exhaust manifold. There is just, I can't even put my index finger in there because there is so little clearance. Anything you can do to keep heat away from your critical areas is a good thing to do on a bike. And that may wind it out. I want to finish. Back here we've got the Tacomoto Tidy Tail. That's turn, run, and brake all in one light unit. And then this is the Moto-minded flex plate. There is a rubberized 3D printed mounting bracket that's here, and it gives you some flex to that plate. So if you hit the ground, that plate hits the dirt, it will move a little bit and then we'll avoid some serious breakage. Up here in the seat area, we have upgraded to the anti-gravity 8-cell battery, and this will fit with some modifications. We have a video that covers that, what you need to do to install that. In the airbox, we talked about our power distribution system. There's a twin air filter skin on that. That's essential. That's an essential upgrade. And then in here is a PC Racing filter skin, or filter gasket rather, a base gasket. And that's super critical because you won't need to grease your air filter anymore. And that provides an absolute rock solid, reliable connection to your air filter and then the base. And the last thing I think we'll finish up talking about is the power commander. So it's right here. You can see that it's located down in the airbox area. And the power commander is an incredible device for fuel tuning, and it's often misunderstood. And I think it's a real gem of a device, and more people would save a lot of money chasing improvements in power and performance that maybe they think a conventional ECU, or I guess what I mean to say is a race ECU or a race replacement ECU. So for example, a GET or an AIM or a Vortex, that is top of mind for a lot of riders. But a power commander, we dyno test these, we do a lot of power and performance and ride testing, and you would be very hard pressed if you're the type of rider who is chasing simplicity. So if you're looking for a bike that has very clean, very smooth, aggressive power, you don't want fancy features, you don't want a map switch, app, you don't need dials, you just want a clean running, easy to install setup, then the Power Commander is an absolute smart way to go. So some of the reasons why I think you should look at a piggyback tuner and why the Power Commander is the ideal one. It is looking at 3 pieces of data as it's making its fuel calculation decisions. So that is unique. So we have a connection to the this is the RPM. So we're looking at the output from the stator. This is the igniter coil. And so that is RPM data going into the unit. And then we're looking at the injector. So that's the pulse width, well, I've got 2 here. I've mixed them up. These with the 3 pins, this is for the throttle position sensor. So the unit knows exactly where we're at with our throttle inputs, and then here is the connection to the injector. And so what a piggyback tuner does is it modifies the injector the on-time duty cycle. So it's a pulse width modulator, and it's taking that electrical signal to the injector, and then it's manipulating the on-time longer or slower depending on exactly where you are in the RPM sweep. And it knows that because we're sensing that. There's other things that you can do with the Power Commander. Here's probably a very strong feature for it. You can customize the tune if you're that sophisticated and want to do that on your laptop at home. You can plug into this and you can very easily with the free software make fueling changes. So if that's the sort of thing, if that's something you know about, that sort of fuel tuning stuff, because maybe you come from the automotive world or you're a mechanic or you're a more advanced and experienced rider and these things are familiar to you, you can easily do that. You can also take this bike now to hundreds of Harley shops. In every town, in every big town, there are many Harley tuning shops, Harley customizing shops, and tons of those have a dyno. And almost 100% of those dynos are dyno jets. So you can take this bike now, while this tune has been created and customized for this platform bike, this rider may want to even make a few other mods, or he may want to verify that this tune is perfectly calibrated to this very specific and exact machine. It's totally doable. He can go to a dyno shop and then have this for about an hour of shop time. They will plug this put it on the dyno, and then they'll be able to perfectly customize the tune to this exact bike. That is an absolute killer feature that you would be hard pressed to find a shop in your area that would have the capabilities of tuning a Vortex or an AIM or a Get. There are shops out there that do that. We're one of them. HP Racing in Texas is another one for the Gets. So there's very few for the Get, very few for the AIM. Again, with the Vortex, they're out there, but maybe not in your town. But I promise you, in your town or in the nearby town, there's a Dynojet dealer. So that's an absolute upside to this unit. And then maybe one other thought that I have is there are times where we have heard of complete and outright ECU failures. And there are some riders who insist that the most reliable of all ECUs is the stock Caheen unit. I have some data that would poke a few holes in that. However, based on the fact that the OEM has decided to use this exact unit, does give some credence to the concept that the reliability will be the highest with the OEM ECU. That's fine if that's the direction that a rider wants to go with. And so maintaining that stock ECU is, if that's critical to them, by putting on a piggyback fuel tuner, if you had a situation where the bike would not start, you can easily disconnect your fuel injector, and which it would essentially defeat and then bypass your piggyback tuner. So you could quickly troubleshoot and remove it. So if you had an issue, if this failed outright, and it could, everything can fail. The failure rates of these have been very low. But if there was a failure of this, you would just unplug your injector and then away you go. You lose the benefits of having that fuel tuning, but you're going to get back to the truck. And that is an absolute strong selling point to the Power Commander. So I guess what I'm saying is, for riders who want to spend only about $400 for fuel upgrades, this is really the way to go. You maintain stock ECU reliability, and then you can go ahead and make your fuel adjustments and manipulations through a secondary device, which is defeatable if you had some sort of trouble on the trail. And again, so customizable. This is just a really winner of a product and very low cost, about half the cost of a typical ECU replacement. So that probably wraps it up. This is a great bike. It turned out really well. It rides unbelievable. The overall peak power is exactly the same on that Power Commander as it is on a full race ECU. We have a video coming out very shortly that is another version of a video that we've done in the past where we just talk about the pros and cons of each tuning and ECU and all those different options. And so look for that soon for a more in-depth dive of those things. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about this, hit us up in the comments or send us an email. And if you want us to build you a bike to your specs, the way you want it, this is completely a boutique bike. We work with the, you can see over here really quick, this is a lineup of bikes that are in for full builds. And there's one over here on the dyno waiting to get some tuning and break in. We break these motors in on the dyno. We do it in a very controlled process. These bikes are set up exactly to your specifications. So if you'd like us to set you up with a bike like this, let us know. Hit us up in the comments, like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.